18 years of his life. And there in Newport, of course, we have the house in which Bloch and his wife lived. And so I have personally met with at least 5 people on this call. And one of those is Alex, who was in Newport 2 years ago when we dedicated the Ernest Bloch Memorial Wayside. I have produced a booklet, the last version of which Alex and I edited together. And today I would just remind everyone that I manage the earnestbloch.org website. And the item on the agenda that I want to discuss in a little more detail, and I hope to have Alex comment about it from his own perspective, but it is the book that was created in 1976 by Bloch's daughter, Suzanne. And the genesis of this book goes back as far as 1956. I'll explain that further later.
Thanks, Frank. Now we welcome a new member, and it's just lovely to see young people. So Evan, would you like to introduce yourself to this august group?
Sure. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Evan Pardee. I'm a doctoral music candidate at Arizona State University. I play the double bass. However, my parents live in Little Yachats, Oregon, just about 25 miles south of Iga Beach. So I developed a keen interest in Bloch, mostly with the geographic location, but then as a professional musician and researcher for my degree, I just immediately became fascinated with all sorts of aspects with him. I'm currently writing my dissertation on Bloch's unaccompanied cello suite number 1. I have done an arrangement for the double bass right now. I am in the process of working on the recording. Needless to say, the technical challenges of playing dedicated cello music on the double bass is great. So I'm working hard on that. I've also recently done a comparison on 2 pieces by Giovanni Bottazzini, a famous bass virtuoso, and comparing their lyrical qualities to prayer and meditation by Bloch in a recent lecture recital here at Arizona State University. I've also done a little bit of work recently with some primary source documents that I'd like to talk a little bit more about later with Bloch's former secretary in Oregon, Helen Johnson Kintner, and I have some in my possession here copies of Bloch's writing of Bach excerpts from the Well-Tempered Clavier, as well as the Goldberg variations, which I found extraordinarily interesting. But yeah, so I'm here as a DMA student at ASU, and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jesse.
Hi, great to see you all. So Jesse Rosenberg, I'm a professor of musicology at Northwestern University, a specialist mainly in 19th century opera, but another very large interest of mine is Jewish music and all of its variety. No Bloch publications on my CV, except for maybe just a few scattered references in articles about Italian music during the fascist period and how that impacted Jews and Jewish representation in opera. On the other hand, lots of passion, lots of enthusiasm, lots of eagerness to move forward with Bloch. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Walter, you need to unmute. You need to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm Walter Simmons. I'm a musicologist and critic. I just recently relocated from New York to Maryland, where I am now. Bloch has been one of my favorite composers since I was 14. I was a staff critic for Fanfare magazine for 35 years, and during that time, I reviewed practically every Ernest Bloch recording that came out during that period. And I wrote a book called Voices in the Wilderness, which was about American neo-romantic composers. And although I realized that including Bloch in that group is somewhat controversial, I gave a thorough explanation and justification for why I include him there. I do think that Bloch was one of the most important composers of his generation. And I would like to see him be recognized as such, and I've done what I can. I've offered to edit this, what Suzanne Bloch had written some years ago. In our last meeting, I offered to do that once I moved, and now that I've moved, I'm ready to do that.
Lovely, thank you, Walter. I'll mute you again. Robert, Max.
Hello everybody, I'm Robert, I'm a cellist and conductor. I live in London in the UK. I studied cello with Zara Nelsova, who had quite a close connection with Bloch, and I was also after that, I conducted Zemmel choir for 4 years, so I had an involvement with Jewish music at that time, and I prepared Zemmel when they were going to perform a sacred service, which they performed, that was in the late 90s, and I've conducted Shlomo, and have recently been working with my students actually on the first cello suite, actually over the summer because of lockdown, finding pieces that that they could play on their own without having to be accompanied because they couldn't be accompanied. So having not been involved with the solo cello suites, I then played them all and then found out what was teachable and interesting for them, and it's been quite a nice journey. So I'm interested to be here. I also teach Malcolm Miller's son the cello, and Malcolm is probably a familiar name and to many of you, I guess.
Thanks, Robert. Edison, where are you speaking from today?
Hello, I am Edison Verbisky from Portugal. I am a doctoral student here in Portugal at the University in Évora, in Alentejo, the center of Portugal. I am also a music professor in a Brazilian university in Mato Grosso do Sul. My thesis research is about Ernest Bloch, especially about his violin compositions, because I'm a violinist. Sorry for my English. I have a training about the Latin language. I also would like to thank again for the opportunity of joining here, and especially thanks to the Professor Alexander Knapp and the International Ernest Bloch Society for the books that I received. I will be very helpful for this, my thesis. My thesis is about violin compositions and the Jewish language in the violin in Bloch. I recently wrote an article with my supervisor, Professor Eduardo Lopez, about musical gesture on Bloch's composition. I will be published soon, but in Portuguese. Okay, I stay here for the listen and very happy for participate now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Judy O'Brot, shall we say. We've got two Judys today. You need to unmute, yeah? Now, somebody's got a child somewhere. Who's it?
Not me. Yeah. Okay. I'm on the little committee that helps organise the International Ernest Bloch Society here in London. I live in London. And I've been working for a very long time with Geraldine and with Alex, not just on Bloch, on all sorts of music projects. So that's my interest. I like Bloch's music. I've sung once, I think it is, in the sacred service, because I sing in choirs, and yeah, and help with what I can. So I'm pleased to hear Edison and Jessie. I know you got the books, and there's a third person. I've forgotten who it was now, but I'll check that up. And Jessie, just to say, I got the payment into the account as well. Oh yeah, I'm treasurer for my sins. So okay, thank you.
Well, treasurer is an extremely important role, and Judy's been marvelous in all sorts of things over many years. So that's fantastic that you're with us for Bloch. Judy Panolis. Unmute, yeah?
Hi, everybody. I'm a librarian, a music librarian, and at the Berklee College of Music and the Boston Conservatory in Boston, Massachusetts. Previously to that, I was at Brandeis University for almost 25 years. I have an interest in Jewish music and have been for over 20 years running a website called the Jewish Music Web Center, which is a little bit in disarray at this point in time, but has a tremendous amount of material on all sorts of Jewish music. And Bloch is an interest of mine since I had many years ago sung the sacred service several times with a choir in my synagogue.
Thank you, Judy. Now we welcome Aaron Klaus, another young person. Can you unmute and introduce yourself?
I'm honored that you think I'm young, but I appreciate it. No.
By our standards, you're young. My standards, shall I say, not
too far off. Well, thank you so much, and I apologize. I'm actually I currently live in South Florida, and I'm actually a teacher. I'm band teacher here at a school, and it's my lunch hour, so I apologize for eating. But there another connection too, as well as Walter. Actually, I'm from Maryland, so a lot of cool little connections here and there. Grew up in Bethesda, if you know. So, anyway, I first became familiar with Bloch as an undergrad. Sort of on a whim, picked up. My undergrad was in trumpet, and on a whim, sort of picked up Proclamation, which is his one solo trumpet piece. Off the shelf, ended up performing it, ended up doing my thesis on that. And I've published a few things on Bloch since then. Yeah, I mean, mostly here is interested party. The teaching and the all that stuff has sort of taken a front seat in my life these days. But certainly an interested party, and very just happy and grateful to get to be here and to get to see on Zoom a lot of people who've been very influential in my Bloch research and my work. So thank you.
Okay, lovely. And and Josh Friedlander has joined us as well. Josh, would you unmute?
Hi, I'm Josh Friedlander. I live in Olympia, Washington. I finished my doctoral, my treatise on Bloch. It was specifically on the Violin Concerto. I did a cultural influences, 4 different ones, but obviously the one I was really interested in was the Native American part, because it was very interesting that the only published Violin Concerto for a person who, at the time when I did my research, did a lot of Judaic music, it was the Jewish cycle and so forth, and yet the major piece that he writes for Violin Concerto when he actually was a violinist was influenced by Native American stuff. And what I found was that there was this journey that he had, and found photos and stuff, and it was really a really exciting journey to find out about his Native American influences in this concerto. What was the things I wanted to say? I also, I'm very excited about the Judaic part, obviously, because I'm Jewish myself. That's one of the influences of why I took Bloch. But I've been that way since I was 13, when I think the first time when I heard Bloch Nigun, when I was up in Meadowmount, and it's been always very a passionate thing that I do, and I collect a lot of his music, and I definitely would like to expand for what I did on my dissertation on Bloch. I'm also very excited to know a little bit more about his influence with Alfred Stieglitz and Georgia O'Keeffe, because those two seem like they do have a little bit of influence in that middle period of Bloch's life, of how he's thinking of things, in my opinion, what I've been reading, and seeing how, you know, photography does have a really big influence in how he's writing his music that is not Judaic in culture and stuff. But I was just really fascinated about his reading about him, and I also had the experience to interview 3 of his grandchildren, the late EB2. I really missed the guy. I wish I had some more time with him. He was a really, really cool guy. I was very honored to go down to Oregon Symphony and talk on the Classical FM. It was the premiere of the Violin Concerto, and I talked all about everything that I know about these melodic gestures that are happening in the work, and also meeting EB2 for a good week. And it's not far away from here; it's about 100 some miles. But I would just wish I had more time with him. I also met Sita Milchev, who's up at Walhalla, California. And I met, George Dimitrov. He actually lives in Tumwater. I don't know about his Tumwater's like not very far from me. It's like 5 minutes. So it's kind of funny that even a Bloch influence is only 5 minutes away. And I met also the great granddaughter, Lucian Allen, which I actually think her birthday is today. And she's also in Walhalla. So yeah. So it's really nice to also meet the greater Bloch family as well, which has been really influential in my thoughts of how to go with this person. But it's just so many things about him, his Judaic stuff, his photography. I mean, there's such an influence of this photography to what he writes. It's just unbelievable. And I don't think there's many composers that have that connection with photography and music, in my opinion. So with such great parts like Bloch. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. Well, I think we have a wonderful group with lots of different connections, and it's great that we can make connections between us. What I think I'd like to do now is actually go on to how we can develop this group into a more regular and study group rather than just a social group. We've been feeling our way around to see who we are and what our interests are. But I'm wondering whether you may like to have a kind of regular study group meeting, and that we could meet once a month or once every 2 months or once a week, whatever you feel would be appropriate, just for an hour or 2 hours, and take particular subjects you could each offer to talk about something, and then have a discussion or ask questions or choose somebody else to interview about something. If you wanted to have a chat with Alex about a particular topic, then we could do that, and people then could listen and join in. And so I just wonder if anybody's got some comments on a Blochiana circle, or whatever you'd like to call it. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think it will mean that, when we come together to meet, we can actually prepare something in advance, maybe, and then it'll be more focused. So to follow according to the pattern, the principle of the International Forum for Jewish Music, which you've organized, Geraldine, which has been going since the summer Tuesday evenings at 5 o'clock in London and all at different times at different parts of the world. The idea is that there are conversations which people have with each other. Two people choose a topic and then talk to each other about it. And then it's opened up to the whole group to participate with questions and comments. I think it's a very nice forum, and it's very, it can be very stimulating. Sometimes it's controversial, but always friendly. And I think that something like that for the Bloch group here, it would be, and other people who might like to join, I think it would be very nice to have that. But as I say, to prepare a little bit in advance so that we know perhaps we can circulate what the topic is, and then people can prime themselves if they wish, and then come ready to have a nice discussion, lasting maybe an hour or two. And I think that I've learned a great deal, huge amount from the International Forum on Tuesday afternoons. And I'm sure that I would learn a huge amount from such a group here with the International Ernest Bloch Society. So I'd really like to encourage, endorse and support that.
Who'd like to make a comment about that? Jesse, what do you think? You have to unmute.
So sorry. I like the idea very much. I don't think there's any need to exclude something maybe a bit more formal. That is, instead of just a conversation between two people, perhaps we can actually read a publication by one of us and have the conversation take place on the basis of what we've read, the notes we've taken, the questions that arise. I know that, speaking personally, I'd be especially interested to hear from these new people, these younger people. Sorry, but it is all relative, and that's how I see you. For example, if we could set up something for Josh to talk about Native American influences on the Violin Concerto, or to explore his ideas on George O'Keeffe and Alfred Stieglitz in relation to Ernest Bloch. In some written form that we could read ahead of time, and then have that as a basis for a dialogue of some sort.
Yeah, great. Who wants to comment next? Josh, do you want to say something?
I think it was Robert that put his hand up, but the other thing, if you want to talk about Judaic, there's also the thing of, he did 3 pieces that have to do with Yom Kippur, and there's the difference in tone between each 3 are completely different, in my opinion. I did go between the second movement of the Israel Symphony, and then there's the other 2. And you could tell that there's a completely difference in how he is expressing Yom Kippur, in my opinion, reading from his the Suzanne Bloch influence notes that there is available. So that was another thing I was thinking, but yeah.
You've obviously got masses that you could deal with. Robert?
Well, it seems to me that the greatest success that this group could have would be if the number of performances of Bloch's music around the world increased. Because after all, he was a composer who wrote music, and the music was there to be heard. And I think probably the biggest problem, perhaps the reason why there is a group of us meeting today, is that 1 or 2 pieces are performed quite frequently and a lot of pieces aren't performed ever. And I think if we don't know the music, and I know some pieces, but not that much. But if we don't know the music and the context, then we can't enthuse our colleagues around the world to take it up. And I would, as a performing musician, I've actually been in touch with Alex. We've been in touch this very week. Alex has kindly sent me a list of, basically a listening list for me, because faced with 30 pieces and many hours of listening, I can't cope with that. But pointed in specific directions to find a way in, I'm very, very interested. And I would love to explore that. And I'm very interested in the background that goes hand in hand with that, and to find pieces that I could program or that I could encourage my colleagues to program.
Excellent. Brilliant idea. Aaron, did you want to come in?
No, I'm interested in all of this though. All sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else would like to? Walter, come on, Walter. Have to unmute. Unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes. What I was going to say is something that I have a feeling sets me apart from most everyone else here. Although, let me make clear, I am Jewish, but I feel that the emphasis on Bloch and its connection to his connection to Judaism has been very much overstated over the years and is responsible. Those people who wish there were more performances of his music really have to face the fact that the way that's going to happen is the promotion of his many works that have nothing to do with Judaism. I'm often arguing on behalf of the 5-string quartets. I actually think his 2nd-string quartet is perhaps his greatest work, but you can't really get anybody to accept them on the level with, say, the Bartok or the Shostakovich quartets. But they're simply not known. I have found very few musicologists who are familiar with all 5 Bloch quartets. That's just an example. The number of pieces related to Judaism that he wrote, I forget the exact percentage, but I worked it out at some time. It was something like 18% of his output. So really, I mean, he is the one. There are many Jewish composers, and they mostly have written some music associated with Judaism, but it does not hit you over the head every time their name is brought up. And I think that Bloch's identification with Judaism and Jewish music is largely responsible for the way he has been pigeonholed as a very minor figure.
Yeah, exactly. That's very.
If I may step in real quick to just few points. I love all the ideas being suggested. I would love to meet weekly and discuss different people's area of research. I've read everything that I can find publishable through our databases and so forth, but the more the merrier, of course, and that's why I'm here. If I may bring a slight note of optimism, perhaps, about in terms of performances of Bloch's work. The double bass community is a very odd, small community. So everybody kind of knows what everybody is doing. So I've been personally fascinated in the last year, and I mentioned this in my last lecture recital I just did. There's a lot of bass players playing Bloch pieces. We're always looking to steal cello players' music, and we do it gleefully, much to the irritation of cello players. So it's giving us Bloch's music is kind of having a minor renaissance in the bass scene. I've seen 2 major bass figures, one of whom is the recent president of the International Society of Bass Players, playing Bloch pieces. I mean, mostly it's Shlomo, but it's also at least we're getting a lot of performances. I can say from colleagues of mine in DMA programs around the country, I've seen 5 people playing prayer on recitals, and I had never heard of anybody else really doing interesting things on Bloch. So just an idea, just some minor bit of optimism that bass players are sort of starting to realize that the wonderful cello music on Bloch can be pilfered. And so whenever we get our hands in somewhere, we'd like to steal as much cello music as possible. But yeah, I just wanted to say, like, overall, I love the idea of a weekly listening or discussion about performances. I know here we've done some Bloch works, and I've had a couple friends program the solo cello suites. One of whom did them on viola here, which was interesting, mostly because I brought it up in a forum we had. But yeah, so anyways, just some random note on some potential optimistic area for performances. But yeah, I love all the guys suggested. I'd love to be part of it.
Well, thanks. I mean, the point is that if we're organizing it, it doesn't have to be constrained to anything, you know. I think all we need to do is decide on a day. Does a Wednesday at this time suit everybody? Because that's the first thing to decide, if that's okay.
Yes.
And
Are
then
we talking about every week?
I'm haven't got there yet, Walt.
Okay.
I'm just deciding on the day first, because the next crucial thing is we need a king of this project, somebody who's prepared to be the linchpin, who will be the one that people can talk to and say, I'd like to do this Wednesday or that Wednesday, and this is my topic. And then he can circulate it to us, or even send it to me, and I can circulate it to the whole Ernest Bloch list that I have, which has about 80 people on it, including some, you know, Raphael Wolfish and Natalie Klein and Rivka Golani and Jack Liebeck, people who also are champions of Bloch. So I'm happy to circulate it when we do it, but we need a king who's prepared to be a linchpin, who's prepared to look after that. I'm looking at you, Jesse.
I was just about to say, I've never before volunteered to be a king or a linchpin. I just to get back to this earlier point, I think that weekly meetings would be difficult for me. Monthly or bi-monthly would be a lot more like it, just because of everything else I have going on with teaching and deadlines and stuff. So yes, I would be willing to coordinate this. And I suppose I would prefer to think in terms of, let's say, setting up 3 or 4 dates for this coming year. So sometime in the winter and spring, just settling on a few topics for discussion or for presentations, dialogues after the manner of the forum that you founded. That I would be up to coordinating.
That would be excellent. Now, which of you would like to either ask for something or suggest something? Because I can see that we could have once a month or even more often introduction of 2 pieces that are not often played. And for instance, Alex could then bring them, we could listen to them, he could talk about them. And, you know, that would be something that players might enjoy. You know, it doesn't mean that everybody has to come to everything, but there could be one session every so often about pieces that people want to get to know. There could be another session for presentations of papers that people are preparing or have given, and then they could give their papers. We could have a different session which is about conversations. It could be somebody who wants to consult somebody. I don't use the phrase pick their brains because I can't bear it. But if you know, this is an opportunity to engage with somebody on a topic that you think they might be able to help you with. So, you know, with conversations on Zoom that Alex was referring to, we decided to start it straight away. And suddenly, every week was booked up, and we're now booked up until March. So, you know, I don't think we should say how often we should meet. I mean, if you are not able to meet every time, you know, that's understandable. But I think we should go for as much material as we can. And I also think we should start immediately, like next week. Why wait?
Can I jump in at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very keen on what has been suggested. Just a couple of general points. First of all, I think we didn't hear from everybody in the group about what they thought. So I'd like to ask Frank and Judy Pinolis and perhaps Laurent as well, if they would like to add to anything in the way that we have just discussed in the last section before, talking about how often we should meet. And then there's just one point, according to what Walter said absolutely rightly, that most of the works of Bloch, which are perhaps not much more than about 9 or 10 that are performed all the time, which are in lots of performers' repertoires, tend to be from Jewish life, Baal Shem Suite, Shlomo, Sacred Service. One of them is not particularly part of the Jewish sphere, which is the Concerto Grosso number 1. But those are the ones that I mentioned earlier on. They're all so-called Jewish works, right? Quotation marks, which those are works that Bloch himself designated as Jewish. And I haven't mentioned all of them, but there are about 9 or 10 which are performed all the time at the expense of all the others. And what about Bloch composed altogether 69, 70 pieces? What about them? It's wonderful that there's research being done now on the Violin Concerto, which I think is a terrific, sorry about the noise. Oh, I don't know where that is. I'll just let it disappear.
I can't hear it.
I can't hear it either.
Oh. It's a horrible loud noise belting its way at me into my earphones. Okay, but it's stopped now. Sorry about the interruption. I just feel that, you know, for example, the Violin Concerto, which I think is a magnificent piece, really. The middle movement especially is just somehow sublime. And I could think of all sorts of other pieces by Bloch which are never performed, occasionally recorded. Very occasionally recorded, but you know, it's simply not part of the repertoire. Now, it's interesting really that in Bloch's own lifetime, a lot of his music was quite well known, and he was actually quite highly regarded. And the chamber music, to which Walter referred, the 5-string quartets, the 2 piano quintets, lots of other pieces as well, were actually performed quite frequently. And I'm talking about in the 1920s, 30s, 40s. And then Bloch went into eclipse. Now, I think we all know this. I'm not saying anything new here, but I'm just saying that I would like very much that, you know, people would have a much wider view of Bloch's musical styles, because I mean, he very eclectic and very fascinating and very intense and passionate and really communicative music, rather than just simply the same 9 or 10 pieces that we hear so often, that they're becoming a little bit hackneyed. When one thinks of certain pieces of Bloch, one thinks in terms of those few pieces as if he didn't compose anything else. And I think that's a great disservice to Bloch. And I think it's a great shame for the musical public, who would benefit enormously from hearing other things. I hope that will come about. I remember chatting with Suzanne Bloch, Bloch's daughter, one time, and she said, you know, everybody plays Shlomo. She said, I'm going to set up a new society. This is going to be the society for the exposition of Bloch's other works. So in other words, everything other than Shlomo. And she said this, I mean, as a joke, but you know, I think it was said with feeling as well. I would like just to call upon Frank and Judy Panolis and Laurent to see if they would like to add anything to the discussion before we decide on the nitty-gritty of how often we should meet and how the actual structure of these meetings should follow up.
The green ones.
Well, I'll start. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm more than happy to help, Jesse. I'm like Laurent, I'm not a musician. I am mostly interested in doing what I can to preserve the legacy of the composer, to promote what's going on. For example, what we're doing right now is free. And it's something that I'm sure if other people knew of it, they would tune in if it became regular and something that we could promote. And of course, we have 2 websites. Geraldine, are you the webmaster for the society website?
Well, kind of. I mean, I don't actually physically do it, but I normally organize what goes onto the website. So
okay, and so I do for the earnestbloch.org website, and I would ensure that what we're proposing here gets top billing on that, so that we could promote this further. I'm, of course, going to talk about other things later, but I'm fascinated, in this book. Suzanne writes, and this is 50 years ago, she says, there are also notes in French outlining 110 lectures that Bloch gave in Geneva between 1911 and 1916. And she goes on to say that there are other lectures that he gave. And I've always been interested in knowing whether somewhere down the road, someone is going to bring those into the light of day and how that would fit into our discussions, which have more to do with scholarship than they do for the musicians in the group who would like to spend a bit more time probably talking about specific compositions. And I think Walter's point about not wanting the Jewish part to be so big as to prevent Bloch's other works from getting known in the world. So I'm very interested in data management, however that can be factored in. Again, I am not a musician. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Frank.
So sorry. I'm so sorry, everyone. I have to run. I have some middle schoolers coming in, but this was great. And I really appreciate, I think, Jesse, I think you're the one who invited me. So thank you so much.
Sure. I will be in touch with you, Aaron, so we can discuss possible future.
That'll be great. Yeah, no, I did not intend to be so distracted this whole time, but I am very interested.
Glad you could join us.
Thank you. Yeah, please keep me updated. I'd love to continue.
Sure. Okay.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Oh, I have a question. I wonder if it would be possible for us to exchange email addresses so that, for example, somebody in this group made a point that I would like to discuss individually with him, and I'd like to be able to have his email address. Do people agree that we should exchange email addresses?
Yes.
Sure.
Good.
Right, I'll be happy to circulate the email addresses. But there also is the Ernest Bloch Society email list, which I think most of you are on, maybe the newer people are not. Now, here, as I say, there are about 80 people who have an interest in Bloch. And this is where you can pose questions or information or something. So I will forward you the information about how to join the Ernest Bloch Society. It's just an email list that you can talk to a lot of people on Bloch in one go. Judy Pinolis, did you want to come in on this project?
Hi, so thank you. So far, this has been actually helpful to me to know some of the people who are, more people who are working on Ernest Bloch and looking at his music in a deep way. I guess one of the things that I'm interested in, of course, as a librarian, is in building the collections that we have. And I've been in recent years sometimes able to provide some, guidance to our collections development and so on. So when one's starting from, other than the Jewish works or the well-known works and building out into these broader works, of course, some of the chamber music is already available, but recommendations for good scores, recommendations for good recordings and so on, that are available. Many of the libraries now are relying on our streaming sites, and streaming services frequently have the same sorts of, many of them have the same sorts of materials. So I want to expand that and look at a broader, larger sense of his work. And, just talking to you folks, I'm going to probably be contacting you. And I just wanted to thank, I guess, is it Frank? You said you have your website. I'm sorry, I forgot which was the gentleman that runs the website. Frank, yeah. So that's terrific, because it gives a very good foundation and has links to archives, and librarians love that kind of thing. So really appreciate that you put that out there, and it makes it very easy and available for undergraduates or whoever's looking into this material to find in one place, find this material. I think what I would like to hear, if I have people who have performed these other works, is to hear their take on them, and recommended works, things that you like other than others, interesting performance ideas that you might have, and some of the materials that you've performed, those kinds of things, whatever you have to offer, that can be then taken back to institutions. So that's kind of where I'm at from a point of view. Yes. So Josh, did you have a question of me?
No, I just have something to add to Walter's, because the reason why I did the violin concertos was to promote that work. In fact, I Facebook Gil Shahan because he was promoting on Sirius Radio the golden age of the 1930s violin concertos, and the two that he missed are Schoenberg and Bloch, the two Jewish guys. And I'm going like, I asked him, and I never got a response back. I said, well, these are fine and everything, but there's also two others out there, and I never got a thing back. The other thing is that I wanted to express to understand how to listen to the violin concerto in a way, because I was a little upset with the conductor at Oregon because he was talking about how he was thinking it was cowboys and Indians, and the thing is that Bloch was not thinking that way when he was writing the piece. He was taking he was trying to find authentic stuff and trying to promote it into his music, just like he did with America. So that's another piece that people don't really do that much of. The Bloch America, that's a very important piece. It won a major award with multiple of great conductors as judges for that. So yeah, and then there's all this other really wonderful works. When he was in San Francisco, I can't remember. I don't have my stuff right now, right offhand. But there's some very interesting stuff talking about like images of San Francisco. It's again my theory about that it's not just as Walter was saying, it's not about just his Judaic, because if you think about it, the beginning one, I also, the other thing is, I'm a violinist too, so I really love violin pieces, and I just was so fascinated to see a person who studied with Izai could what would he do with his violin concerto. The other thing I was wanting to do is that there is an unpublished violin concerto that's still in the archives in the Library of Congress, which I have not seen, and I would love to find and promote that as well, or find out, because I know it's going to be French influence, very impressionistic, based on what he was writing at that time or what he was learning at the time with his instructor. So there's a lot of stuff that Bloch has done that is not just Judaic and stuff. So yeah, I that's something I really wanted to express. The other thing is, when I did my doctoral recital, my lecture, it was the Sonata Number 2, the poem Mystique, and that one doesn't even have any Judaic. It has a chant in the middle of it, out of the blue. And a kind of funny thing part is that when I found out there's this connection again, once I was doing the violin concerto, which is all my dissertation, but this guy has a lot of stories to tell. The Ernest Bloch thing, we can find it from his photographs. We can also find it from his journey where he's writing these stuff. So I think there's I really wanted to promote the Violin Concerto. I think it's a really remarkable work. I'm finding, you know, even when I went to see, I want people to play it live. When I heard it live, I started writing notes down. I was like, oh my God, I didn't see this when I was writing stuff. I didn't see this when I was writing my dissertation. There was just some things that I just saw that he was influenced by other composers to put into that, thinking that it might have some native influence. So yeah, and of course my fun part about the thing is, why did he write? I mean, what was that influence? And I talk about Solomon Bebo, you know, the only non-Native American tribe governor that was Jewish. I mean, come on. I mean, if there's a connection between that, I would like to know more. So this guy's very interesting. I like Bloch a lot.
Thanks.
On the subject of recommendations, I wonder how many people are aware of the recordings that were made in California on the Laurel label during the 1980s, mostly in the 1980s. Laurel recorded with the Pro Arte Quartet, all the string quartets and the two piano quintets. And I think that their performances are the best performances of these works. Also a recording of the Scherzo Fantasque and the Concerto Symphonique. These are really major works. These are great performances, but they are never discussed in discussions of recordings. I mean, everybody talks about the Portland String Quartet's recordings, but I think that the Pro Arte quartets are so far superior, and getting at the heart of the music, really, really presenting the expressive content fully. And so I would encourage everybody. Laurel is a sort of obscure label, and you have to, you know, if you Google it, you'll find out how to contact them and get a hold of these recordings.
Thank you.
You want to come in? Thank you, Walter.
Who was that?
Do you want to say something about
I
those
just
Laurel?
want to say that Robert had his hand up.
Well, you've got your hand up.
Well, I think, yeah, but he does not use it. I want to just mention to everybody that if they're not familiar with Zoom and the fact that you can hit the button at the bottom that says participants, and there's a raise your hand function. That way Geraldine doesn't have to, especially if this were to grow with multiple screens, it's hard to tell whose hand is up. So I just mentioned that in passing.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
I think he was just raising his hand to tell us he was leaving.
Possibly, yes. Waving goodbye. Alex Knapp, did you put up your little hand?
My little hand. My tiny hand is frozen. No, it's not actually. Anyway, no, fascinating to hear all these things. And I think that there were a couple of points that interesting came up. And that is about the works that Bloch composed as a student. So Josh mentioned, I think it was the Violin Concerto, the unpublished one that he composed when he was a teenager, which I think also went under the name of Poème Concertante.
That's correct.
And the score does exist. There is a little bit of concern among certain members of the Bloch family, the Bloch heirs, as to whether these works ought to be performed and recorded, since Bloch didn't actually publish them or didn't have them published. Now, this is this is arguable both ways, and I think, I like to listen carefully to both sides of the argument. On the one hand, there are certain people who think that this music should not be tampered with because Bloch did not publish it, therefore he didn't want it in the public domain. There are others who said, well, he didn't destroy these compositions, and so therefore maybe he just never got round to having them published, or maybe they weren't quite representative of his mature style, which of course they're not, but nevertheless, they're worthy. And quite a lot of early compositions, those that he composed when he was a teenager, actually have been become available on recordings and in concerts, and in published versions, for performance purposes. And so therefore I think the conversation is worth pursuing, and I hope that the Bloch family would allow it to happen, because my feeling is that it would be very interesting to hear these early Bloch works, which are very much in the Franco-German sort of fin de siècle style, but they're very accomplished. I mean, they may not be typical of the Bloch that became the Bloch of later years, but still very worthwhile. You might be interested, or perhaps even amused, to know that one of the talks that I give is the influence of traditional Chinese music on works by Ernest Bloch, and there are 3 of them. Chinese, Eastern Asian, shall we say, or Southeast Asian, which is just yet another of the influences. Josh mentioned the Gregorian Chant. Gregorian Chant appears here and there in a number of Bloch pieces. So therefore we have a man here who's very, very interested in lots of different musical cultures. And although I don't think the Jewish aspect should be neglected, I think it's a very important feature. Nevertheless, I think we should also look at the other aspects of Bloch that make him such an individual character, and also his life, which was extremely colorful, as we all know.
Was I don't know, before I didn't get a chance with Bloch EB2, but when I asked them if I wanted to look at the stuff, I don't think they were really mindful. It was just the publishing. Is that what they're concerned about?
Sorry, what did you
about the music in the Library of Congress? Because there's, I think, isn't there a piece for Izai that he dedicated to, and then Izai's wife?
Yeah.
Those should be really important, to, I would think, publish.
Sure. I think that people are I think the Bloch family welcomes people doing research on this music. So therefore, looking at the manuscripts and going to the Library of Congress, maybe, I don't know whether they make copies of these things for people, but nevertheless, I mean, people are allowed to research it. I think their concern is whether it then becomes published, performed, broadcast, recorded. Those are the issues I think that they're a little bit concerned about. Ernest Bloch II, I think had a much more, how should I say, easygoing approach to this. I asked him quite often, because I heard from people who wanted to do a performing version of this or that, and he said, well, if sure, why not? Whereas now, I think there are certain members of the family who are a little bit more concerned. Perhaps Laurent would have more information about this, but there are some people who are more concerned, and there are other people who feel the opposite. They feel it's perfectly legitimate and there's not a problem. So, but I remember talking a lot with Ernie, and he seemed to be quite comfortable. And indeed, he wanted Bloch's music out there. He didn't want it, restricted and put on, just for the shelf. He wanted it out there.
Well, I want to chime in. I want to chime in here and just, there are only a few people who have had conversations with the Bloch family, and as Alec knows, we have Ernie's generation is now down to 1 person. I think Laurent has left us. I was going to make some reference because
here.
I'm back.
He's here.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Anyway, the 4-volume Lewinsky set was really possible through Laurent's father. I think he did the bulk of the work to see that would happen, even though Dr. Lewinsky and Emmanuel were the worker bees. But the family in the US, and specifically the direct descendants of Bloch, the most vocal person right now is the daughter of Lucien, and that's Sita. And Sita is the only one of the Bloch family who is a musician. In other words, most of the others don't have an opinion. When Ernie passed on, he was the executor of the estate, and that is now passed down to his daughter, Suzanne. So I'll let Alex comment further, but the most vocal opposition to the discussion of should unpublished works be published, I think, is Sita. And once that, I think she's the only other person left in that generation, I think, is one of her brothers.
Mhm.
So really the only ones who are going to care about whether or not the unpublished works become performable or publishable is Sita.
Yeah, I think
Well,
then. Sorry, go on.
I just wanted to say that I'm sure there's a lot of interesting material to study in those early unpublished works, but when there are so many mature, published works that of Bloch's that he considered finished, and they are still virtually completely unknown, it would seem to me that they deserve the attention rather than digging up the things that he did not consider part of his mature output. I mean, they've done this with Samuel Barber, digging up pre-published early pieces, which has been somewhat controversial, but at least you could say his 47 pieces are all well known. But there are dozens and dozens of mature block pieces that nobody knows. I mean, the Symphony in E flat, for example, how many people have heard that symphony? While those are still completely unknown, I just think it's premature, except perhaps just for scholars, to go digging in pre-published works.
Okay.
Who'd like to?
Did we, out of curiosity, just on semantics, did we ever fully decide on a regular meeting frequency?
I actually
Bi-monthly?
had something, something to interject on that. Sorry. Next Wednesday is for that subgroup of us who are living in the United States. Next Wednesday is the day before Thanksgiving, big national holiday. So I think that might be difficult for Americans to attend, even though this is obviously going to be a Thanksgiving very different from any we've had before. The following Wednesday, December 2nd, I personally have a commitment. I'm giving a different Zoom lecture that would conflict with our time. Now, I'm glad you reminded us that not all of us need to be present at each one of these get-togethers. But for me personally, December 9th would be the earliest Wednesday. And I think I might also add, to me, that actually sounds like a good date to set, because it would give us time to organize ourselves, perhaps to circulate some reading, set up a schedule in advance. And following that, maybe we can be loose and flexible about whether we stick to particular Wednesdays or go for something a bit freer than that.
I want to raise a question. Before Aaron left, I was going to ask the question because is anyone in this group actually working from their workplace right now? Because he said he's in teaching middle school, so doing it at noon for him, or where is he? Oh, he's in Florida, so he's on the same time zone as me. So that means he has to do it at noon. And that's fine, but I just want to bring that up because like in London, what time is it there now?
Well, it's now 6 o'clock, but it's
okay, 6. So you
the meeting starts at 5. If we keep to this time, it seems to work. But I think, why don't we suggest, Jesse, that we start on the 9th of December, that we look at the second Wednesday every month. And then we can either make it less frequent or more frequent as opportunity arises. We will then ask people who want to say something, ask something, present something, discuss something to contact you. And then you see how it goes. I think we can be, I'm very much for being completely flexible and being completely organic to let things grow at the pace that they want to grow. So
What was that date that you suggested?
the 9th of December.
And then henceforth, the second Wednesday of each month.
And the second Wednesday of the month.
Same time.
Same time.
Yeah, that sounds quite good to me, actually.
Okay, one of the things is that I'm not saying we have to do this for the 9th, but in the sense that we have the ability to promote something that's coming up, if we know ahead of time, so that we can make that a programmatic illustration for the website, that people have an expectation. But I agree with Geraldine, flexibility I think is important, but when we do have a focus, let's try and promote that so we can expand the group.
We could have an introductory session at each meeting, which introduces a website or a list. There can be a little promotional, how to get hold of Bloch session each time with promoting one aspect. We could do that. Okay, so, and I would say that this is not something that has to be a musician or a scholar, or this is open to anybody with an interest in Bloch that they would like to expose or ask about or present. I think that it's completely open. Edison, would you like to say something, having listened to this, because we haven't heard your view of our Blochiana circle? Edison.
Okay, I would like to invite the support for my translation. The student of psychology.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Because my English not very good. Maybe I speak in Portuguese. She is a student of the psychology. Okay, it's okay.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, okay. Eu acho muito interessante que seja uma vez por mês, né? Provavelmente.
Okay. Edson says that he's interested in participating. Maybe once a month, it would be good. It would be better for him. And in a few time, he needs to prepare something, and he would like to present. But maybe with the help of his supervisor, who has more ability in English and is also a musician, and it's called Eduardo Lopez, and maybe he will participate too in some in one meeting specifically, if it's okay.
Eduardo Lopes is a musicologist, and he studied with the Nicholas Cook in England, my supervisor. Okay. Ok, quem sabe posso convidá-lo. Também acho interessante colocar uma outra língua, né, como o português, né? Por isso convidei um pouco, porque poderia, né?
He said there's nothing published in Portuguese about Bloch, so he's doing this. He did it in the master degree, and now has some articles already, but it's all in Portuguese. And of course, he needs to translate to you, but it's something new here too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
I'm afraid I must leave now. but I've enjoyed this meeting and I look forward to what we have coming up.
Thank you, Walter. And you made a few notes, yeah?
Yes, I did, and I'll send them to you.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The rest of you, obviously people have to go, they can go, but if you'd like to stay on and chat to somebody, we don't have to close the meeting immediately, but we understand if people have other commitments.
To jump in real quick, I'm working right now on my dissertation document and in my final semester at Arizona State in the spring. So I'd love to share what I've done in regards to analysis of the first cello suite, which could be a little more technical for the musician and performer minded. But I also want to bring up an interesting point helped out by Alex and Frank. I got in contact with Helen Kintner's family. And so I do have, and I meant to ask Judy about this, I am currently in possession of 2 Beethoven symphony scores that were owned by Bloch, as well as a, put my glove on. I have a large collection here in this document of his actual handwritten transcriptions of those Bach piano, the well-tempered clavier. I am using some of this examples in relation to my dissertation in terms of talking about the first cello suite specifically in regards to the influences, right? I mean, we've talked a lot, and I certainly won't claim to be an expert on the Jewish music that Bloch wrote, but I have studied a lot of the music he wrote in Agate Beach. So as such, I'm relating this obvious influence of Baroque and Bach elements into the first cello suite. My point, I suppose, is one, the family has a large collection of possessions that the secretary took with her after Bloch's passing. I have looked at all of it about exactly a year ago, actually. And there's a lot of interesting items, a lot of things that are not necessarily, weren't of particular interest to me at the time. The Beethoven scores and these handwritten transcriptions I've been using and keeping safe here because they've been relevant to what I've been doing. But there's other things, and so perhaps that could be a project to reach out to them and potentially give them an option with what to do with these primary source documents. They have some personal connection to a few of them, but not terribly much so. They don't, again, they're not musicians, as they're just, they love their mother. And that's about the extent of it in terms of that. They didn't necessarily realize the entire extent of the documents they had and their usefulness. But I digress. But yeah, and one of these, I'd love to talk about what I've done with the suite. And I also have a video I just made, which is much more focused on bass players and casual listeners and viewers as a lecture recital about comparing bass pieces to Bloch, which people could watch if they're wanting to be tortured with bass music. Yeah, so anyways, there's these documents here. I would love anybody's input on what I potentially could do with them and potentially help the secretary's family about where they should put them. I had sent an email to the University of California at one time because I know they contain most of the primary sources from the Agate Beach years and never heard back. That's probably, I would imagine, because of COVID issues and the library is completely closed. But anyways, just filling in some information there, and I'd love to talk about the first cello suite in its and what I'm doing to play it on bass, and also my analysis as well sometime.
One thing about the California Berkeley, I went there directly. You have to almost be there directly to get anything happening, and this was before COVID. So I mean, it might be that I had to get like a special library card from I think it's called the Doe Library. So I had to go down all the way. So they have this brand new, really nice library for music right next to the music school. But they have them all in like these big metal crates and such. So Yeah, I can understand the problems you might be having. I was trying to get the letters. They have a whole bunch of letters at the California one. I just wanted to see if he was going to say anything about what was he thinking during the time when he was doing his violin concerto. So that might be the problem.
I think that you raised the general question of Bloch archives, which are all over the place. And there is no one depository. I mean, there's a big one at the Library of Congress, and of course, San Francisco, Cleveland, they have things, Lausanne, Geneva, and they're all over the place. So there isn't one place you could go to really have a comprehensive archive that's related to Bloch.
And potentially sometime we could even discuss that in one of these meetings. I think that'd be interesting, especially for somebody who's, you know, in current academia as a student, trying to find resources and having been doing so for the better part of 5 years. It would, you know, it was a trickier process potentially, and so that could be, I don't know, a project I would be personally interested in potentially.
Geraldine, how long do you want? It's been an hour and 20 minutes. When do you expect to bring closure to this?
I'm happy as long as there are people who want to talk to each other, and it could be 2 people or 4 people. So, but if you have to go, you can go. You know what I mean? We won't be offended.
No, I mostly, since I'm on the agenda, and it's no,
talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just, I just want to keep it as brief as possible, so as the audience dwindles, then can always talk about it later too. I don't have to do it today.
We'll do it now. Well, you know.
Well, probably the two points I wanted to make are that if anyone is familiar with the 4-volume set by Lewinsky, that 4 volumes has, for practically every year of Bloch's life, has these very small chronologies. And those have all been extracted, translated, and are on the website. And I point that out because there are innumerable times when we have gotten questions posted to the website where I could find the answer that a person was wanting to know in that particular source. So just be aware that you can study whatever Lewinsky and Dijon have in their volumes, which is like 3,500 pages. They're all boiled down by year from 1880 to 1959. And so it's a quick way of looking to see, you know, if you're in 1934 and you wanted to know what was going on in Bloch's life there, you can find that really quickly. You can find out when Zara Nelsova came to Agate Beach. You can find out when he met with so forth and so on. So that's my first point. As far as what I was going to talk about today, which was the Suzanne Bloch thing, and this is mostly for the benefit of those who really want to have some good program notes for concerts that they are producing, because you know, Suzanne first started putting this together in 1956, and then it grew, and then finally, in anticipation of the 100th anniversary of Bloch's birth, this was prepared, released in 1976, and essentially offers some tremendous program note material. And this is all on the website. Now, Alex and I have talked about this for a decade because there was some reluctance to do anything with it, because quite honestly, there are some editorial needs, but in the sense that one can get a general sense of almost all of the major works, these are notes from Suzanne and Bloch himself. And this is all on the website. So all of this is there, but Alex and I had early on entertained the notion of actually going through this and issuing it in hard copy. But I decided that until that was possible, I wanted this to be available to people for their own needs when they are putting together program notes for concerts that are a little bit more direct than some of the stuff you find just by picking up books that are all over the place, including Walter's book on the that he described earlier. So, and of course, the other thing that we do have in here, thanks to Alex, is that when we did the booklet for the dedication in 2018, we were able to take all of the research that he had done for his book on Bloch that was issued, what, about 2017, 3 years ago. And so all the most authoritative, comprehensive list of Bloch's works are found in that list, and that is posted on the website. So these are three major ways that somebody can quickly find information that might be useful for program notes. And that's all I wanted to communicate today. Alex, did you want to expand on that?
Can I just say to Frank, could you write me a paragraph, a short paragraph on those three ways, and I will circulate it on the main list as well as to us. That would be really helpful.
I will.
Thanks.
Yeah, perhaps I should comment about the Suzanne Bloch book, which I certainly found very interesting, but for all sorts of different reasons. It's actually a very interesting sort of snapshot of Suzanne herself, because her personality and character and her joie de vivre and her general style of writing English is very characterful, very, very colorful. And I think it's really very compelling, the way she writes. But there are certain issues. And so that was why when I was talking with Frank about this book, it's called Creative Spirit, Program Manual, 1976. I felt that if one were to start with editing it and trying to smooth out some of the ripples, it would be a very huge job. And that's why I have to be honest to say I have had a bit of a mental block, so to speak, about actually not settling down to it, because it would take a long time. But I would like to do it with Frank, and perhaps with Walter as well, because it's a very interesting document, and the program notes really have lots and lots of insights. And I think, you know, it's not only the program notes, the book contains a number of other chapters, even if they're short chapters. Nevertheless, there's a lot of useful and interesting information. So, you know, I just need to take a deep breath and then go for it. But it's a very big, and I imagine it'll be quite an arduous job. That is quite separate from the other issue, which is Suzanne Bloch's biography of her father, which she never finished, but she worked on for years and years, decades, basically. A copy, I do have a copy of it. Of course, there are a few copies of it around. It's only in typescript. And that would also need a huge amount of editing, but it contains information that you cannot find anywhere else about Bloch himself. And so therefore, obviously, that's another major project that needs doing. And, you know, one requires a huge amount of energy to do it. So I just put those out there. I would like to be active with it, but I haven't so far really have been able to do so. So that's really an answer to Frank. I'd love to work on both of them with you.
Yes, and I want to add one other thing about the Lewinsky, and that is Sylvain, who was at our last meeting, who is wanting to translate the Lewinsky. He's not trying to do all 4 volumes, is he?
I think so.
I think he's working on it, not as from volume 1 to volume 4, but in kind of topics or years, or, I don't think he's trying to turn it into a searchable resource rather than just translate the books.
Okay. All right, just curious.
The question I'd like to ask Alex, maybe Frank as well, is, you're sitting on this material and you're not able to get round to doing it. Are you willing to let it out to any other young scholars who want to do it, or who are prepared to get the thing transcribed onto a computer? How are you prepared to share the work?
Oh, as far as I'm concerned, there's no problem about that at all. Of course, I want to share it. I mean, I don't want to hold on to Ernest Bloch as if he were my property, which would be absolutely absurd. No, the thing is, though, it would have to have the approval of the family, because fortunately, I got to know the family well enough, and they gave me this material. But they gave it to me, for me to work on, and also to Frank to work on. But I think, that subject to their approval, of course, anybody can is most welcome to work on this material. I'm as far as I'm concerned, I'm absolutely fine with that.
Well, the only issue is that the Suzanne 1976 book was published, and we do have the rights. Those were passed on to us by Anthony, Suzanne's son. So that's not an issue. The one that Alex referred to last, the Suzanne block, really needs to be filtered through a brain like Alex's. I don't believe you could really pass that on, Alex, because a young scholar would not have the necessary perspective to truly take because what Anthony did was what any loving son would do, who realized that his mother had something to offer and did what he could to capture these thoughts, but it is no more than a preliminary outline of a book with a lot missing. So to make some sense of it would, like I say, from a historical standpoint, irrespective of the music itself, Alex has that kind of vantage point where you can see out over from the mountaintop down through all of the thoughts that are in that potential book. But I don't think a young scholar could tackle it. That's my personal opinion.
Well, I'm just wondering whether Alex would need the help of a young scholar to work with, not to say to give it to them and go away, but to work together, because, I think Alex needs the help of somebody who's going to get it transcribed, who's going to be able to ask questions, who's going to be, have something to do. I think just to wait for Alex to do it is
well, we all know. Yeah, there is a history here.
In the world.
That's
okay.
Fair.
No, that's perfectly true. No, anyway, I appreciate very much what you say, Frank. Thank you for those words. I suppose I did have the benefit of knowing, like a lot of scholars, knowing the Bloch family. And I think that is probably fairly essential in getting a picture of what Suzanne is writing in her book. One has to, that there is a context, there's a sort of like an undercurrent, a sort of like a subtext. And I think, that is not something that is automatically perceivable. But I do think that it's not impossible for, all sorts of people to have a very useful input in trying to get this into some kind of publishable form. And I would be very, very happy to share that. It's not that I'm hanging on to it for the sake of hanging on to it. It's just that, you know, I would love to work on it, and I just, you know, it just hasn't been possible.
I absolutely understand. But I mean, you know, you've got this in your head, and we've got to proceed with it while your head is still functioning well. So that you know.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I don't want this to become a discussion about, you know, my role in Bloch research. That's not what I want to do. I just mentioned it because there are these documents that await attention.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think that we've got the opportunity of actually being the International Ernest Bloch Society, and you know, especially with some young enthusiastic people, as well as the older enthusiastic people and the very old, and I'm counting myself here, enthusiastic people, we can move forward. And so I'm just wondering what you would like to call our group, or whether we just call it the IEBS study group, or whether you have a name, or whether the Blochiana circle appeals to you, or what we should call this, sort of, now that we've agreed that we're going to try to set up a monthly Bloch study group of some sort.
Well, I wouldn't want it to be too esoteric.
I think the idea of study group is good because that says what it is. I think the idea of Blochiana circle sounds like a little bit like the Bloomsbury group, or some kind of elite kind of, you know, ethereal collection of people who meet in the ether. I think it might be quite good to call it what you said just now, Geraldine. Study group sounds nice, I think. IEBS study group, and then people know what it is.
Or Ernest Bloch Forum, which I think the word forum communicates the same idea, but yeah, it's a little more expansive.
Okay, that's fine.
Evan, what did you think?
Either one's great. Yeah. I think the study group's a good one. It sounds a little more open, especially like for potentially like undergraduates or younger members. Forum makes them think of like dodgy internet forums with just gray text boxes on top of each other, at least from you know, my interactions with my younger students that I work with. So study group's a little more warm. I was going to ask in that regard, like, it would be kind of interesting to see maybe an email thread on each, like if there was like discussion points that happened outside the meeting, if there was like an email thread, or like a in the quite literal sense of like an online forum, which of course is like really a pain to set up and nobody wants to dedicate that much time to running it necessarily. Maybe
it exists.
Oh, go ahead.
It exists, so we'll just tell you how to join it. And
does it?
There is a group, an email group, email list of Bloch interested people. So
great.
Join us. And so I think we're all set. We've got a date. We've got a group of very enthusiastic people wanting very different things and being able to offer different things to this study group. And we've got a coordinator, shall I say. Jesse is not a king or a linchpin, but so I see no reason why we can't. So what I will do is I will email everybody who's been here today, everybody else's email list. I'll email you the and just make a few points that you should contact Jesse with the ideas that you would like to present or ask for or have presented on this sessions. And we'll keep in touch by email and meet on the 9th of December at this time.
Very good.
I look forward.
Thank you, Geraldine. Thank you for coordinating this and I'll be in touch.
Okay, so if there's any other business, we can all go and have a cup of tea or
I'm going to need to shuffle off to another appointment now, but great seeing you all.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you for the email, by the way, Alex. I appreciate it.
A pleasure. Good. I hope it's
Yeah.
useful.
No, it'll be great. I'm still like getting through. I actually just finished my comprehensive exam for my doctorate last week. Then I go into my panels on 2 days from now. So I'm still.
Could you open it up all right?
Yeah, I believe so. I did on my other device. I'll double check just now.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry it took so long to get to you. Yeah.
No, it's fine.
Mea culpa, as usual. I'm sorry.
No worries. No, I appreciate
it. And with Jesse, we'll keep in touch as well. Oh, he's gone now. Oh.
No worries. I was going to say it just occurred to me. I was on my phone right at the end. This is a little bit maybe heavy technology, but depending on how many people get interested, we could set up like have you guys ever used Slack? SLACK? It's mostly for businesses, but we're using it in an orchestra here at Arizona State, and the university is requiring it for classes. And it's like a workspace place where people can have different channels and talk about different aspects of a class. And it is free, and it's really nice software once you kind of get used to it. So this is something I'm very familiar with down the line. That way people could have a conversation on, say, we could set it up like works before 1916, works 1916 to 1941, and then works 1941 onwards. And then everybody could have like discussions inside of there. It could be really organized and so forth. And then anybody with an email address could get in or out of it. Just an idea to like really quantify discussions as opposed to long emails. It could just be in a nice, clean form thing. Just an idea.
Sure.
Let's start this way. And as I say, I'm very happy for organic growth. If somebody wants to come along and say, may I try this? That's fine.
Perfect. I'll give it a research. I'll give it a look and see if it might work out. But thank you so much for your time. I appreciate both of you. Have a good one.
All the best. See you soon.
Bye. Enjoy your evening.
And you too.
Okay.
Okay, Geraldine. I was going to get in touch with you before the meeting, but then I just couldn't because there were one thing after the other. So I'm sorry that I didn't do that.
Us now. We can have a chat if you want.
Yeah. I've got something coming up, but yeah, for a short time. Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I was a little surprised and disappointed that neither Sylvain nor Zakaria came along today, because I was expecting them, because they're quite, they seem to be quite active, obviously, but still, not everybody can come every time, I suppose.
There may be a reason why they didn't come, or
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'll perhaps keep them on the email that I send round about this.
Yeah.
But also, we will use the big list that we've got.
By the way, that list of 80 people, I think there are 1 or 2 people who've died who are still on it. And I think there are 1 or 2 email addresses that are not quite right. But mostly it's fine.
But can you correct them, please, or identify?
I can let you know what they are. Yes, I've got to find them first. Again, the list, but I did notice. Yeah, so I should do that.
Yes, thanks. Okay. All right. Otherwise, I think that was quite good. We've sort of got some energy and some opportunities.
Yeah.
And,
the newcomers are rather active, or rather got good energy, I think. Yeah, it's nice.
I don't know. I think Evan came from Frank, or maybe you and Frank, and the other 2 came from Jesse. He found them. So
yes. Evan, I met 2 years ago in Oregon when there was that dedication ceremony, and he was there, and we talked a lot about the chamber music and things like that. And I think he got dragooned into helping the Lincoln County Historical Museum in Newport. There's a sort of Bloch archive there, very small, but there is one. And I think that he may well have started working on trying to catalogue it, or some kind of activity of that kind. Anyway, he seemed very enthusiastic, and we've kept in touch on and off over the period. And I think he'll be good. And I think that Josh will be very good as well. And also Aaron, I think, great potential, really.
Well, we've got Jesse to thank for that, and that's why that he will coordinate this thing, because, you know, I can't take on any more. I mean,
no, you're doing plenty. Yeah.
As long as it's got its own driver. So I'm glad that he's taken that on.
Yeah, I'm pleased as well. That's good. Is Judy willing to carry on as treasurer for the time being?
I think so. She just wasn't feeling so well today, so she said she didn't want to take notes.
Yes, I got that message. No, but I just had a vague memory that she said something that she's not going to be treasurer indefinitely or something.
Well, she said when she took it on, she wasn't going to do it indefinitely. Well, none of us were, but you know, she said she'll carry on. So.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, look, things have their lifetime, and if necessary, this has a new lease of life, then it will have to have a new group of people. I mean, I'm not going to be there forever, and you know.
Who will? Nobody will be there forever.
So we'll just take it as it comes, see how it goes.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
I'm pleased with the progress. I think, you know, I think this technology is phenomenal.
Isn't it amazing? Yeah.
It's such a blessing, you know. And you know, with the COS also, I'm really impressed to see the level of regular attenders and the caliber of the regular attenders. You know, like Eliyahu Schleifer's there every week.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Michael Levitt comes. He's the head of American Society. So we had a meeting on Monday to talk about publications. You know, IFJMS has got Tekia, the online journal, and they've got Musica Judaica. And they're struggling with Musica Judaica.
Really? Oh.
It should be a peer-reviewed journal, and so there's fewer people offering stuff. And Tekia has never taken off; it's blank, you see. Oh. So we decided that we should get together and offer this dual, you know, recruit for articles, and Musica Judaica has a set of criteria, and Tekia will have a set of criteria, and each one has their own editorial board. And we can offer to say, would you like to publish something? And you could either offer it for this or offer it for that. And then they will review it and accept for one or the other. And it's a nice combination because Tekia can publish things almost immediately, and they just slot into a category. They don't have to be time scaled, you know. And Musica Judaica endeavors to be an annual thing that comes out by Rosh Hashanah. I'm not sure how often it does meet its deadlines. But, you know, here is, I think, a viable alternative to get more stuff published and quicker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so is Tekia a refereed thing? Mm-hmm. Refereed things do carry more weight.
Yes, well, we've got
peer review.
We've got the option.
I'm surprised. I mean, over the years that the American Society didn't make Musica Judaica into a peer-reviewed journal, because you know it has had articles of that kind of level, but they don't carry kudos because it's not, you know, it's not at the level of a peer-reviewed journal.
Well, that's what they've done it now.
They've done it now. Oh, that's good.
But they're struggling.
Oh, when you say they're struggling,
particularly proactive. You know, Mark, bless him, is involved in everything. You know, he's the academic director of the Forum of the American Society. He's, you know, one of the directors of the International Forum. He's on this and he's on that. But it seems to be that he works very reactively rather than proactively, you know. And he's got too much on his plate, really, to you know, and he's an editor of Musica Judaica. Well, he doesn't have time to look at this stuff, you know.
No, well.
But you see, Martha and Miranda will be the editors of Tequila, and stuff can get out, you know.
Who will? Who will?
Martha and Miranda from the Tequila belongs to Hanover, the University.
Hanover. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I see. Well, that sounds good.
So that's progress, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So well, next Tuesday we're doing this review of the
High Holy Days. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so anyway, I thought this was fine. I've actually recorded it. We should have. Let me switch off the recording now. We should have switched it off a while ago.
Yeah, I didn't want to say too much about, you know, Sita and the family, the Bloch family, because I don't think that's, you know, sort of for general consumption. But anyway, I have a feeling that there is a solution here, and it just needs some